Gavin Cole, once a titan of industry, now sits alone in his penthouse staring at a blank contract. He's about to walk away from an $80 million deal, and he doesn't know why. The city lights of Chicago flicker through the towering glass windows, cold and distant, mirroring the emptiness that has settled inside him. The sleek lines of his penthouse offer no comfort, everything feels sterile, devoid of warmth. His fingers hover over the pen, the weight of the decision heavy in the air. Something deep within him rebels against sealing the deal, though he can't yet name the reason. Months have passed since his divorce, yet the silence it left echoes louder than any boardroom debate. An unopened letter, sent 6 years ago by Lena, still lies hidden in his safe, untouched. It's a secret he's avoided, afraid of what truths might be inside. Adrian Chase, his ever-charismatic and subtly manipulative business partner, watches Gavin's hesitation with thinly veiled disdain. "You're letting sentimentality cloud your judgment," Adrian remarks, his voice sharp but coated in faux concern. "This deal could define your legacy." Gavin clenches his jaw, feeling the tension rise. It's not just about business anymore. He calls off the mega merger abruptly, leaving the boardroom stunned. "This isn't me," he mutters under his breath. His loyal assistant, Ava Monroe, observes quietly, her sharp memory catching the flicker of something unresolved in her boss's eyes. Later that day, compelled by a restless need, Gavin finds himself walking through the sterile halls of a hospital, visiting an old friend. The crisp November air presses against his coat as he steps inside, the familiar scent of antiseptic filling his lungs. As he turns a corner near the pediatric ward, his breath catches. There, walking calmly past him, is Lena, his ex-wife, whom he hasn't seen in 6 years. Time has softened her features but hasn't erased the memory of their shared past. Their eyes meet briefly, a frozen moment heavy with unspoken words. Lena doesn't stop, she doesn't speak. The child walking beside her draws Gavin's gaze, an eerie resemblance to a 5-year-old he once dreamed of having. A ghost of a future lost flickers in his mind, and with it, the fragile control he's maintained begins to crumble. The chill of the Chicago wind presses in as Gavin stands rooted, heart-pounding. The meeting was no coincidence. Something buried for years is clawing its way back to the surface. He knows this encounter will unravel more than just his emotions. It threatens the carefully constructed life he has built since the divorce. The child walking beside Lena bears an eerie resemblance to a 5-year-old Gavin once imagined having. Lena doesn't stop walking. She's mastered the art of moving forward, especially when the past tries to catch up. Her steps are measured, precise, each one a silent declaration that she won't be pulled back into old wounds. The brightly lit corridors of Mercy Hills Hospital feel sterile, almost hostile, but Lena moves through them like a shadow, unfazed by the cold clinical atmosphere. Gavin follows cautiously, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The memory of Lena's final words during their divorce echoes sharply in his mind. "One day. I hope you understand what you gave up." Those words sting now with a new meaning. The man who once controlled every boardroom deal finds himself disarmed by uncertainty and an unfamiliar surge of paternal instinct. As they reach the pediatric wing, the quiet hum of hospital life surrounds them. Gavin's eyes drift to the small boy walking beside Lena, Micah Moore. 5 years old, with wide, curious eyes that seem to absorb the world with silent wonder. Gavin notices the uncanny resemblance to himself, subtle hints in Micah's features that stir a whirlwind of emotions. The boy's quiet presence contrasts sharply with the tension crackling between Gavin and Lena. Gavin tries to bridge the gap. "Is he mine?" His voice trembles, betraying the confusion and hope he barely understands himself. Lena's expression hardens, her jaw tightening. She refuses to meet his gaze, offering only short, guarded replies that keep him at arm's length. "You don't get to ask that now. Not after 6 years of silence," she says coldly, shutting down any further questions. A nurse named Rebecca approaches, exchanging a brief word with Lena before stepping aside. Unintentionally, her words confirm Micah's identity. She mentions his last name, Moore, and his recent admission date, grounding the reality Gavin struggles to accept. The revelation deepens the divide, layering confusion with a bitter taste of regret. Just as Lena opens the door to Micah's hospital room, the boy turns back. Their eyes meet, Mika's gaze locking onto Gavin's with a strange recognition that sends a chill through the air. It's a moment loaded with unspoken connections. A silent acknowledgement of a bond neither fully understands yet. The encounter ends with the tension unresolved. A fragile thread stretched tight between past and present. Gavin is left standing in the corridor, heart pounding, as Lena and Micah disappear behind the door. The weight of secrets and silence hangs heavy, promising that the truth won't remain hidden for long. Micah turns back before entering his room, his eyes locking with Gavin's. Filled with a strange recognition. Gavin knows the truth, but truth without proof is just regret. The memory of the past presses on him, a constant ache that refuses to fade. 6 years ago, on what was supposed to be their honeymoon at a remote cabin, Gavin cancelled the trip for a surprise board meeting. That decision shattered Lena's trust, and she never forgave him. It was the moment their lives fractured irreparably. The seed of silence that now threatens to explode. Sitting in his sleek legal office, surrounded by the cold precision of glass and steel, Gavin contemplates his next move. The sterile environment contrasts sharply with the turmoil inside him. He needs to confirm what he already suspects: Micah is his son. Without proof, all he has is doubt and lost years. He reaches out to Dr. Patel, Mika's physician, under the guise of concern for a former patient. Gavin's questions are met with polite refusal. The doctor bound by patient confidentiality laws. The walls of privacy close in on him. But he refuses to give up. If the law won't help him, he'll find another way. Ava Monroe, his loyal assistant, calls with a whisper of unease. Adrian's been holding secret meetings, she hints, her voice tight with worry. The tension within the company mirrors the chaos Gavin feels in his personal life. Shadows are gathering, and allies may be harder to find than enemies. Determined, Gavin visits the hospital near Mercy Hills. He discreetly collects a used cup from the nurse's station, a small risk, but one that could change everything. The DNA test is submitted quietly, a silent hope for clarity amid the storm. Days crawl by. Gavin's mind races through possibilities, doubts gnawing at the edges of his resolve. When the results finally arrive, the paper feels heavier than any contract he's ever signed. The truth stares back at him in black and white. Gavin is Mika's biological father. The evidence is irrefutable, but the victory is short-lived. Across town, Lena opens her mail to find a sealed envelope, no return address. Inside lies a copy of the DNA report. Her eyes widen in shock. The guarded walls she built threatening to crumble. The game has changed, and Lena knows this is just the beginning. Lena receives a copy of the DNA report in a sealed envelope, no return address. Gavin doesn't ask for time with Micah. He just shows up, every day, waiting. The cold November air in Chicago brushes against his face as he approaches Mercy Hills Hospital. His presence is quiet but determined, no grand gestures, no demands, just steady, silent persistence. Lena's words echo in his mind. Showing up means more than showing off. He clings to that thought like a lifeline. Inside the hospital cafeteria, Gavin slips into his role as an anonymous volunteer. He keeps his distance but finds ways to be near the children's reading corner, where tiny hands clutch books and eyes light up with wonder. He watches Micah from afar, the boy's curiosity sparking a flicker of hope inside him. Each day, Gavin reads aloud to the kids, weaving stories that stretch beyond hospital walls, stories of courage, kindness, and second chances. Micah begins to notice. One chilly afternoon, as snowflakes drift past the hospital's front steps, the boy's quiet question breaks through the silence. Why do you come every day? Gavin's heart tightens, but he answers simply, because someone important is here. It's a truth wrapped in a gentle mystery. A seed planted in the fertile soil of a child's mind. Unseen by Gavin, Lena watches from a distance, her expression guarded but softened by what she witnesses. The man who once walked away now refuses to leave. She notices the way Micah laughs when Gavin reads, how the boy's eyes follow Gavin's every move. Slowly, the invisible walls she built begin to shift. One afternoon, Micah, with the unfiltered honesty only a child can possess, calls Gavin Mr. G. The nickname hangs in the air like a fragile bridge between past and present. It is a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Then, without warning, Lena steps forward. Her voice is steady, carrying the weight of years spent protecting her son. "If you keep coming here, you better be ready to stay," she says, her eyes locking with Gavin's. The challenge is clear, the stakes higher than ever. Lena approaches. "If you keep coming here, you better be ready to stay." Adrian slaps a file on Gavin's desk. "You're distracted. Step aside before you burn this company down." The words cut sharper than the cold November wind outside the sleek glass walls of Stratcom headquarters. The room pulses with tension. A battlefield disguised as a boardroom. Gavin stares down at the file. Its contents a silent accusation. A plan to wrest control from him. Once, Adrian was the protégé, the ambitious young man Gavin had taken under his wing. Now, with a calculated smile, Adrian seizes what he believes is his moment to rise. "You're losing your grip," he says, voice low but deadly. "The company needs a leader who's present." Ava Monroe watches from the sidelines, her eyes sharp and worried. Later, in a hushed conversation, she warns Gavin, "Adrian's been courting key shareholders behind your back. This isn't just a power play, it's a coup." Gavin's world tilts further when his phone buzzes, a message from the hospital. Micah has had a minor medical scare. Without hesitation, Gavin rises from the marble conference table and walks out mid-meeting, leaving a stunned room behind. Before leaving, he hands Ava temporary proxy rights, a reluctant but necessary step. The sterile hospital hallway is a stark contrast to the corporate battlefield he just left. The antiseptic smell mingles with his racing thoughts. As he approaches the entrance, Lena stands there, eyes steady but fierce. "You gave up your company for one moment with your son?" she asks, her voice carrying a mix of disbelief and challenge. In that instant, Gavin's priorities crystallize. The empire he built is at risk. But the chance to be a father, real and present, calls louder than ever. Adrian's smirk fades from memory, replaced by the fragile hope that comes with a second chance. Lena meets him at the hospital in trance. "You gave up your company for one moment with your son?" Lena texts Gavin 2 words, "We talk." The message cuts through the silence of his restless night, stirring memories long buried. The key to their old cabin still lies untouched in her drawer, a symbol of promises made and broken. Never discarded, never used. It waits, like the fragments of their past, ready to be reclaimed or finally laid to rest. It's 3 a.m. in the hospital staff lounge, a quiet refuge bathed in dim light. The world outside is asleep, but inside, the air crackles with tension and unspoken truths. Lena and Gavin sit across from each other, their faces shadowed but eyes sharp with years of pain and regret. Lena's voice breaks the silence as she recounts the night she told Gavin about her pregnancy. She had hoped for support, but found him instead with a female investor in a hotel room, a memory that twisted her heart with betrayal. Gavin, in turn, remembers that night differently. He insists he never cheated, only failed to hear the urgency in Lena's words. Their pasts collide in that moment of shared misunderstanding. "I wasn't afraid of motherhood," Lena admits quietly. "I was afraid Micah would grow up thinking that silence is how love works." Her words hang heavy in the air, revealing the emotional fortress she built around herself and their son. In a fragile gesture of trust, Lena hands Gavin the second half of their unspoken truths, the old honeymoon tickets from the trip he never took. It's a symbol of the life they could have had, now fragmented but still alive in small pieces. Suddenly, the calm shatters. Mika's condition worsens rapidly. Alarms beep sharply, and the staff rush to prepare the ICU. Gavin and Lena exchange a look, fear, hope, and uncertainty swirling between them as they face the fragility of their shared future. Mika's condition suddenly worsens. ICU prep begins. The heart monitor beeped erratically in the sterile silence of the pediatric ICU, each irregular pulse echoing the fragile dance between life and death. Gavin sat beside Mika's bed, gripping the boy's tiny fingers with a desperation that words alone couldn't express. He whispered stories into the quiet room, stories Micah had never heard before. Tales of hopes, dreams, and a future Gavin longed to be part of. The boy's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, each one a testament to the fierce will to survive. Lena's words from months ago replayed in Gavin's mind. A father isn't someone who shows up at birth. It's someone who stays when staying is hardest. Tonight, that truth was more real than ever. As the medical team prepared for an emergency intervention, Gavin's resolve hardened. He made a decision that stunned even his closest allies. He officially resigned as CEO of Stratcom, relinquishing his grip on power but holding on to an advisory role. The corporate empire he had built was slipping through his fingers. But nothing mattered more than being present for Micah. Later, in the quiet warmth of a late-night diner, Ava shared alarming news. Adrian, sensing Gavin's vulnerability, was orchestrating an emergency shareholder meeting, poised to erase Gavin's influence and seize full control of the company. The stakes were higher than ever. Gavin's legacy and his fight for family collided. Gavin looked out the frost-covered window, snowflakes drifting silently as he murmured, "Let him. I won't miss the one Christmas I might ever get with my son." The words marked a turning point. Power no longer held meaning without presence. Back in the ICU, Mika's voice, weak but clear, broke the tense silence. "Dad, don't let her cry alone." Gavin's heart clenched. He promised, with all the strength he could summon, that he wouldn't. Whatever battles lay ahead, he would face them, not as a CEO, but as a father. Adrian stood at the head of the boardroom table, his voice sharp and commanding. "The kingdom's builder is no longer fit to rule," he declared, eyes scanning the room filled with skeptical board members and a gallery of faces on the Zoom call. Outside, media crews gathered like vultures, waiting to capture the fall of a titan. The sleek, glass-walled Stratcom headquarters had transformed into a battlefield, a war for legacy and control. Inside, the tension was palpable. Ava Monroe, poised and resolute, rose to counter Adrian's accusations. "They can't steal what's built on loyalty," she said firmly, laying out a stack of affidavits signed by staff and recordings that exposed Adrian's coercion to manipulate financial projections. The evidence was damning, enough to shift the tide. Gavin watched quietly, the weight of months pressing down on him. When it was his turn, he met Adrian's gaze unflinchingly. "You want my chair? Take it," he said calmly, "but you won't stain the company's name." His voice carried the quiet strength of a man who had traded power for principles. The board deliberated, the minutes stretching unbearably long. Then, the vote came. Adrian was removed from all positions of power, and Ava was named interim CEO. Gavin would remain as a consultant, a guardian of the company's soul rather than its throne. As the meeting adjourned, Gavin gathered his coat and slipped out through the side door, avoiding the waiting media. His phone buzzed, Lena's name glowing on the screen. He hesitated for a moment, then answered, stepping into the cold December night. The war for legacy was over, but a quieter victory had just begun. Snow blanketed the landscape in a hush, muffling the world outside the cabin near Lake Geneva. Inside, the faint crackle of the fireplace echoed through the rustic wooden walls as Gavin lit it for the first time in a decade. The warm glow filled the room, casting long shadows that danced with the memories lingering in the air. Outside, Mika's laughter broke the silence as he rolled a ball of snow across the yard, shaping it carefully into a snowman. His eyes sparkled with wonder and innocence, a stark contrast to the heavy history shared by the adults inside. The child's excitement was contagious, pulling a rare smile from Gavin's guarded expression. As Micah stumbled inside, cheeks flushed with cold, he held up an old, folded piece of paper. Lena, sitting quietly by the fire, recognized it immediately. It was the plane tickets to this very cabin, tucked inside her worn journal, a relic from a dream deferred years ago. Gavin's voice was soft but steady as he addressed the room. "I want to apologize, not just to you, Lena, but to myself, for the years lost, for the moments I let slip away." His eyes met hers, heavy with regret but also hope. Lena reached out to Micah, weaving the story of how they had once planned this as their honeymoon spot, a future that never came to be. Mika's wide eyes grew even wider with a child's certainty. "Then let's do it now," he said simply, tugging at their hands. Gavin reached into his pocket, producing a tarnished ring, the symbol of a promise once made and forgotten. "Not a proposal," he said quietly, "but a promise." The room held its breath as Lena leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to Gavin's lips. Micah clapped gleefully, breaking the moment's reverence with a hopeful question. "Can I wear a tie tomorrow?" For the first time in years, the cabin felt alive, not with what was lost, but with what could be found again. Micah burst through the snow-covered porch with the excitement of a child who had just unlocked a secret treasure. "They said yes," he exclaimed, his voice ringing clear in the crisp January air. The words carried more weight than mere agreement. They were a beacon of hope. A sign that healing was not only possible but underway. Inside the cabin, the warmth from the fireplace wrapped around Gavin and Lena as they exchanged glances heavy with unspoken understanding. Lena's final note during their divorce lingered in Gavin's mind. "Love can grow back if you water it with truth." Those words had guided them back through pain, silence, and years of separation, to this moment of fragile reconciliation. Micah, beaming, stepped forward with a small, serious face that belonged to someone older than his years. "I want to carry both last names," he said quietly but firmly. More Cole. The declaration was more than symbolic, it was a new identity. A bridge between past wounds and future promises. Gavin and Lena smiled, a shared resolve settling between them. They agreed to hold a private commitment ceremony, no guests, no grand spectacle. Just the three of them binding their renewed family in quiet strength. It was not about tradition, but about choosing each other every day. Soon after, the launch of the Micah Foundation took place, a heartfelt initiative dedicated to supporting children from single-parent families battling heart conditions. The event was modest but powerful, attended by supporters virtually, including Ava, who joined the celebration via video call, her eyes shining with pride and loyalty. At the ceremony, Gavin passed the reins of the foundation to Lena with a solemn nod. "You always had the real power," he said, his voice thick with emotion. It was a moment that redefined strength, not in dominance, but in grace, compassion, and unwavering commitment. As the day drew to a close, Micah sat beside Gavin, closing the storybook his father had been reading. "Let's write our own next," he said with a hopeful smile, eyes full of the promise that their story was just beginning. The arc of betrayal, loss, and redemption found its quiet resolution, not in grand gestures, but in the soft power of truth, love, and a family rebuilt on its own terms. After years of silence and betrayal, the quiet victory at the story's end brings a bittersweet relief. Justice finally claims its due. Though not without cost, it reminds us that truth, no matter how deeply buried, will emerge when met with unwavering courage. Like the steady flame that never falters, justice may take its time, but once kindled, it lights a path that no shadow can permanently hide. Sometimes, all it takes is one brave step to shatter the walls of deception and reclaim a stolen fate.